Ki ma ma ma. It is the Mama Masters of Horror, and we are the Cult Film Showdown. We are on the penultimate episode of the 2005 to 2007 series Masters of Horror, as produced by Mick Garris. And we are on the episode The Washingtonians, which is the season 2, episode 12. And I am joined by a Nick Boxer.
Greetings. You know, that penultimate thing has always sort of confused me. I mean, it didn't come into common use until a couple of years, well, probably 5 years ago. It's sort of like the bi-weekly, bi-monthly thing that nobody can quite get right.
Yeah, it's
so this just means the second to last, right?
Yeah, it's if the last is the ultimate, then this is the penultimate. In theory, you could have one more that is like the denouement, but it's one of those words that it's a Stan Lee word for me. It's one of those words that I saw in comic books that I never heard in real life.
Well, considering the last episode is the Japanese inspired produced episode, would that not technically be like more of a denouement than an ultimate?
I don't know. It's like, is denouement before the end or is it the end? I don't remember.
I thought the denouement was the wrap up.
Yeah, see, the only context I've ever heard that word used is the Tick cartoon. Again, like.
so you're saying your sources are species the best.
I mean, in context, it probably made sense. You know who else is here? Jack Hall.
Hold on, looking up Denny Mob. Currently busy.
I'm gonna just. Well, we'll see how long it takes you to figure out how it's spelled.
I think this is a new record. I have thrown us off horses early.
Yeah, that's a classic essay writing tip: is do not start with a definition of the word that you're talking about. You don't want that. Well, while Jack is researching the vital information that we're on, I think anti-penultimate is the one before this. I don't think we called it that. I don't think I remember the term, but I believe that's what it is. Nick, tell us what the heck.
I'll admit at this point, I'm not looking it up anymore. Got distracted by porn.
Oh, fair enough. What do you get if you
got distracted by porn?
Yeah, of course. If you type in Denny Mob, it's basically another word for gangbang, apparently.
Do you not know that?
I
didn't want to know that, but
no, extremely curious if what happens if you like put the right name, the right word, but into Pornhub. Nick Boxer, could you tell us what happens? Oh no, we're going to start with Jack. We always start with Jack. Maybe by next episode, I'm going to have this down. Jack, who are our masters this time out?
Oh, well, it's directed by Peter Medak. I hope I said that right. I may be referencing saying names correctly over the next 2 episodes a lot, because it stars, Johnathon. I don't know, Schaech. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I don't know if anybody does. But Peter Medak, best known horror work, of course, is The Changeling, 1980 film, cult classic with a supernatural horror film with the great George C. Scott in the title role. Other than that, he's done a lot of things. He's done television, he's done films, he's done in all sorts of genres. A lot of thrillers, some comedies. You don't think of him as horror first necessarily, but he did do The Changeling and also Species 2. So, I mean, that's frightening. And and I mentioned Johnathon Schaech. I mean, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is odds are that I'm not. He's what I don't even know. He started like his company with this guy called Richard Chizmar, called Cheapskate Films, and Richard Chizmar has also got the Cemetery Dance Museum magazine and Cemetery Dance publications, and has worked his whole career in horror, and co-wrote this with Johnathon. And so it's Medak, Schaech, and Chizmar for the win, because this episode is, well, it's a win, not the way they really wanted it to be, I don't think, but
But
it is
I
a
think
win.
would be the term.
Pardon me?
Bug nuts would be the term you're searching for.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. That's a good one. But I don't know. What did Johnathon Schaech do? Anything that you guys could think of? And I mean, in the world of horror. I mean, Doom Generation isn't horror. That's like dark comedy, and you know, Poison Ivy too. I mean, really, the Phantom.
As far as
Yeah.
I mean, as far as depth of the bench there, that's a I mean, he's a terrific actor. I've seen him in lots of stuff, but his credits do have a Day of the Dead acting role there.
There you go. There you go.
He was in the new version of Creep Show.
I think Richard Chizmar is probably the most, because he has a magazine which is, anthologies and short stories of horror film, and has written a bunch himself. He's probably the closest to a master, but I mean, he's not exactly a known name. So,
It's more of a farm
is this
team,
a
is what it
horror?
sounds like, yeah.
This is under master of horror? I don't know if this would be considered horror or not. This episode, I mean, it's so campy on purpose and so incredibly, I mean, comedic on purpose, but sometimes comedic on accident as well. And so I don't really know. I mean, it's hard to imagine that anybody's scared by this episode.
I would give it horror comedy.
From what I understand,
in order to
the
understand
original story
why,
was much more serious in tone.
Sorry, Nick first there.
I was just going to say that this story was indeed much more serious in tone in its original incarnation of the short story. And I don't know. I think the masters of horror having these type of breath of fresh air episodes where you're doing something different makes sense. And I don't, there's a lot of people in the horror community that would reject something like this, because I mean, you do get the blood, you get the guts, but just because it's funny, I would not say it's horror.
Well, from my understanding of the original short story, it's black humor. So it's still loaded with humor. It's just that this is more camp humor, and that's more black humor. So I mean, I still think it's not necessarily serious in tone. I mean, it's difficult to be with the subject matter, which we have not yet discussed, because Nick has yet to give us the breakdown of the episode.
Yeah, I think as Nick paints you a word picture, I think that this could be played straighter in a book. Once you put it on screen, you're kind of committed to it being a bit campy.
Yeah, you just end up with people with powdered wigs running around.
Yeah, and it's never going to be too serious.
Alrighty. What happens in this episode? A family traveled to a small town to tidy up the state of what I believe is the father's grandmother. And they inherit her house. They're staying at the house. The family consists of a mother, daughter, and a husband. As they're cleaning up, they find a painting of George Washington. It turns out within that painting is concealed a fork made out of a human bone and a letter explaining that this fork was made of the femur of one of the children that George Washington has eaten.
You heard that right, folks.
Yes. It turns out
Many
George Washington was a cannibal. And not only that, there's been a cult existing all this time protecting George Washington's legacy and continuing the cannibalistic traditions of the founder of the United States. And after all that is revealed, there's just a lot of people in powdered wigs chasing our family, trying to eat our family, inviting our family to fancy parties where cannibalism is going on, until a library cop shows up and shoots everybody. That's what happens.
I don't know if a library cop is quite right. I mean, he's a professor at the university who brings the FBI in, the army or whatever, I guess, to shoot people. But they deserve to be shot. They're horrible people. I mean, this thing opens with him decapitating a young lady. They never explain why. They never have nothing to do.
No.
with anything in the show. It's just some woman is walking along, and all of a sudden she acts creeped out, and there's a bunch of fog, and somebody on a horse rides. I'm guessing this was released. I can't remember when Sleepy Hollow came out, but maybe if they're trying to capture in on that. But just that decapitates the woman, and then we never hear anything about her or why that they did that again. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe she's tastier after she's decapitated and they decided to eat her. I can't tell. All I know is apparently young virgins tastiest of all.
Mm-hmm. I did like how they actually incorporated the cherry tree myth in there for as some sort of symbol of virgin cannibalism. Confusing, but I like they included that.
I love that they just say like, oh yeah, we did that cherry tree, but you know what we mean by cherry? And I'm like, no, not 300 years ago. I don't.
Or hadn't popularized it yet.
It's 250 years. No, I don't think that's at all what it could have meant.
Yeah, no, I mean, I struggle with this episode in many ways. I struggle with, all of it.
Really, because I was like thinking, I'm in for
I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it.
I want the entire George Washington story done in a theatrical film. I'm in for checking in periodically through U.S. history to see how the Washingtonians are doing. Yeah, no, I'm all into this franchise.
Well, let's start with this. So the Washingtonians, they turned out to just be people who want to bring back cannibalism across the country. So what they've decided to do is make sure that this fork and this letter that came with it, admitting that George Washington admitting he's a cannibal, and he's quite proud of it actually. And these Washingtonians want to keep this fact secret because it would ruin Washington's reputation. Now, this, if you really think about it, seems at odds with the idea of making everyone want to be a Washingtonian and a cannibal, because.
See, I mean, to be fair, that's not your open to get somebody into a cannibalistic cult.
I think it might be. I'm pretty sure. Hey, look, it was good enough for Washington.
Well, what would Washington eat? Yeah.
You just start adding little bits of meat into people's food and.
Oh man, there is a scene in a restaurant where everyone is eating meat, It has got to be one of all-time schlockiest scenes, movie, TV, anything. It's just these people, disgusting people eating meat, blood squirting down all over their faces and everything, and you get the feeling the meat has not been. Oh, it's and it goes on for about an hour and a half. It's amazing.
This is a good time to mention that this really plays into people's gerontophobia, the fear of the elderly. There are several scenes that are just meant to creep you out about being around old people. Everything's filmed in this really weird way. And the actors they chose all emphasize some sort of aging, all have facial features that have some sort of age that induces some sort of fear for most people, I think. And I think that's what the eating scene is all about, or that the first eating scene, let's say.
Well, it's
I think
yucky.
it's about meat.
I think is there an explicit reference to them wanting other people to become Washingtonians? Because my overall sense is that this was kind of a secret society thing, that they're keeping it a
society thing, but they do mention at the end. They do mention that, and we will, take back this country and be in Washington's, in his, what do you call it, image, take back the country in his image and become cannibals. Like they do reference that at the end of the episode.
I mean, it's a longer trip. I mean, there's a series of problems with the chain of evidence here.
I think there also seems to be undertones of like a fear of napkins in this entire piece. Everybody who eats in this never wipes their face, and they've whatever they're eating, whether it be a human being or barbecue, has stuff smeared all over their face through this entire thing.
Well, in their defense, the barbecue was probably
human. Be a little bit delicate about it.
It's so these Washingtonians. It comes to the end that this is a secret society. At the beginning, they seem supernatural. They turn out to not be supernatural. They're just a secret society. And yet there's many moments in this when they show supernatural abilities. I think they went, will that make sense? No, but it'll be scarier. And so they just did it. So things like they're sitting there, the couple is sitting there in the morning having cereal, and all of a sudden inside their cereal, they realize that they've been eating a bunch of fingers with their cornflakes.
Again, with no explanation of,
Yeah, it just happens.
They successfully kept people out of the house the night before.
Maybe maybe they're right. Cannibalism gives you superpowers. I was on board with that.
Maybe it was just confusing because
I'm feeling like Nick is starting to lean towards cannibalism himself. I'm getting a little worried here.
I am a little hungry.
Maybe just prop like rubber severed fingers were just the gift in box for Shreddies that at that time.
There's a lot of gifts in
just a coincidence. Yeah. I got back in the day. I got more than one toy in a box. That happened.
Okay,
I mean, it probably wasn't 6. In a bowl. Yeah, it probably wasn't 6.
Yeah, yeah. No, things like that, or like their ability to track down the couple from the city and track down their house and everything like that, and apparently to make as much noise as possible to try and get in and scare them, and yet in no way wake any neighbors. Things like that gave them superpowers.
No, I think that the tracking one is quite easy because different people were in contact with them about this inheritance that started this whole thing, and they've got police that are involved in like the secret society. So I mean, either one of those could have solved that pretty quickly. But presumably, I mean, they had to contact them somehow to like tell them that they got this inheritance. The second thing I can't help you with.
The amount of noise being made, and yet the police and nobody calling the police except for themselves, who show up way late. Yes, none of that is. And then they show up again the next night, and the police are right there in front of the house. They show them in front of the house, and then they show up, and apparently the police decided nothing going on here. So
At least I
just
just
left
taken off.
coincidentally right before. Yeah, this thing is a mess, but it isn't. If you go into it with the right mindset, it's an entertaining as hell mess. If you're going into it thinking Peter Medak, he did The Changeling, one of the classiest, most interesting horror films of all time, and you're expecting that, you will not get that.
Did you not realize that the cops were part of the Washingtonians?
Well, it was pretty obvious pretty early.
Yeah.
Well, the first time you meet the cops, and they're like, you should. I mean, especially the last line, something like "sleep on it," before you. That line said several times before you show the world that Washington was, and spoiler alert, if we haven't given any already, at the very end, it's found out thanks to the librarian, police, or professor, depending on who you're listening to. He has successfully got the fork and the letter out to the world, and the conservative radio host, who is this radio host. The film starts with, and this is no exaggeration, I sometimes am known to exaggerate. Like I said, the eating scene went on for 90 minutes. It was probably 15 seconds. But it's no exaggeration that this thing starts with the film driving and nothing happening for at least 2.5 minutes. While you're listening to this guy talk about how the country is going downhill, how they're listening to this guy. So now they bring him back at the end, and he's talking about how are you surprised that Washington was a cannibal and all this and that. So they decide to take Washington off the dollar bill, and they need another George. So they choose George Bush Jr. to go on it.
That joke is pretty cringy. It hurts.
Well, I mean, the other choice was Senior. So, I mean, in retrospect, we've done better than Bush Senior or Junior, perhaps, but we've done worse too. I think we can say at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they could have put Taft on there.
I suppose, but nobody knows him, so they put George Bush Jr. on the dollar bill, and that's how it ends. Is everybody, all three members of the family, the first the father, then the mother, then the kid, holding up the thing and just being surprised, and then it shows the picture of George Jr. on the dollar bill, his face replacing George Washington's face. And when I say replacing his face with the face, I mean they left the powdered wig for some reason on George Jr. as he's well known to wear, and just replace the face.
The weird moment of that for me actually isn't. I mean, that is George Bush Jr. Actually, George Bush III, to be precise. Is like it's dumb.
Yeah.
But the setup of that, where the dollar bill has been changed, and they haven't paid attention to that in the news, that they could actually be surprised that morning that there's a new dollar bill. Like they're like point. they get like their lives.
They're listening to the news all the time.
Yeah, it's like they're saved, and then they're like, oh, we will escape the Washingtonians. The last thing I want to hear is a single thing about George Washington. So do not show me any news that has anything to do with this. The evidence, I want to go back to that because it was hilarious through the whole thing. Like what this is, so he finds this painting of George Washington that it accidentally gets a tear, and he finds jammed into the upper corner of this rolled up piece of paper, which he then, I mean, this is presumably a $250 50-year-old piece of paper that he proceeds to carry around in his pants pocket for the entire rest of the episode, rest of the mini movie here. And it's like,
Yes, even when it makes no sense to have it on him,
yeah, he's just, and it's never
he still
hidden.
has it on.
Yeah, he's just got it's literally rolled up in his pocket.
Yeah, he can leave the fork anywhere, but that note is always on him.
Yeah, and well, in this fork, and then the note is like it's 2 sentences long, and it's basically like, it's supposedly George Washington. He signed it, and he says, like, I really enjoyed eating that kid like I've enjoyed eating all the other people. It's like 2 sentences, and I'm like, it doesn't prove a thing. Also, what's the context that he would have written that, even if it was all true? Like, there's nothing else to the letter. It's not like it was a PS. Like, it's the entire letter.
Why would he hide it in the painting? Like, why any of this? Like, this is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we don't need a Washingtonians franchise.
I mean, George Washington did commission several paintings according to this show, because they do have the painting of him and several naked women eating people.
That's great.
In the banquet scene.
Yes.
How do you pose for that?
So yeah, you're eating people, you're having paintings commissioned. It seems like a natural that if you need to hide something.
But again, why does the note exist at all? Like, what's the context he would have written that down?
It seems like, why is it taking so long for this to be found out? I mean, you really think about it. It's not like this guy was sitting there with some great conspiracy hiding it. The Washington was pretty out there going, look, naked women and human beings. I'm eating them.
Yeah, like when you get to the Washingtonians' secret hideout, where like the cult meets, they've got like cases and cases of stuff that apparently proves that Washington was a cannibal. This is like the one bit they didn't have their hands on. It's like they had the full set of cutlery except for this fork. And well, and it was hidden, and they're all like excited because it's been found, but then you find out that like because he's inherited this place from his aunt. It's his aunt, right? But his uncle was a Washingtonian.
I thought it was his grandmother, but could be an aunt.
Whatever, yeah.
I don't know.
But her husband was a Washingtonian, which means like he had this thing and hid it from like his own secret society while they're looking for it. Like, it's
why?
Again, why?
Well, I mean, the grandmother or whatever did pack up the cigar store and moved it into her basement.
Yeah, it was the
so there might have been some like disagreement about what's safe to keep your relics.
Well, yeah, I mean, the implication at the beginning is that this was one of the things that was in the cigar store, and then later he was like, they just kind of offhandedly say, "Oh no, he was a Washingtonian too. That's why he had this."
Okay. Now, I was able to glean.
You go ahead.
Sorry. I was able to glean the ending to the original story was a little bit different. It was the redcoats that burst in and shot everybody, which I think changes the entire, I don't know, political undertonings of the show. I actually like it better, having the British all of a sudden burst in and shoot everybody in the water.
Yeah, I don't know why they made that change. No idea why they made that change.
One twist too far, I guess. I don't know. Like, I mean, you'd have to unpack that, and then they just had I mean, I think the implication is that this college professor is part of a different secret society that's trying to like out this story.
Wait, you're saying that if they did that, if I'm getting this correctly, what you're saying is that they did that this thing wouldn't make sense.
That was where I was going with that. Yeah, and when you say it,
they can retcon it in the prequel.
When you say it like that, say I wanted them to burst in and they're the Jeffersonians or something.
Oh man, it's something.
We've missed out on the weird white-haired guy that looks like meth Colonel Sanders.
Oh
At the
yes.
beginning of this, he turns back up over and over, but he's a friend of the family. He's got that old southern charm, even though this is Virginia. And he's like straight out of Gone with the Wind. And he's weird from the first time he shows up because he's waiting at the house to talk to them. And he's the executor of the will, and then he like almost makes a pass at our hero. Like he gets like he puts his hands on him, gets so close to him. Like it's like where's this part going? The answer was nowhere. But
Nowhere. No.
He was
He's
sexually
there, like-
aggressive with everybody, though.
he was.
Little
I
children,
think
the
Nick
wife.
said what Nick said earlier about having old people and shooting it in a way just that you'd be uncomfortable just because they're old and they're right in your face and overly grabby or kissy or whatever. That I think it's just some of that going on. Because other than that, no, it's. See, I miss this type of this. See, that's one of the things. This is very Cult Film Showdown type of episode. What we were doing on Cult Film Showdown, the search for the ultimate B movie, where we would rate it in things that were not necessarily in
we never considered objective quality as one of the
objective quality. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, things like more heart than budget and schlock appeal and WTF moments. And most of this Masters of Horror, we couldn't sit there and go, let's do the WTF moments at the same level as this episode, or the schlock appeal, or like most of these episodes they've been enjoyable, but in different ways. Yeah. This one is a true throwback to the CFS, to the Cult Film Showdown, and I have realized how much I've missed talking about these type of films.
That's something to roll into as we talk about what series we might want to look at next. Something that's a bit more, a little more wacky. A little. I mean, given this episode a little less polished, despite that this one looks like it was shot on short ends and that they didn't get all their scenes before they had to edit it. Like we got a minute and a half of them driving a car. Can we use that? Like, yeah, let's just start with there. The definition we always
still
use.
A little short. Let's have them decapitate a lady for no reason. Never mention it again.
We had that left over from another episode we were doing, and that footage from the episode we did with the hitchhikers. So I just pad this thing out to 57 minutes. They turned it in thinking it was a half-hour block that they needed to fill, and not an hour. It is, it does reach that. The litmus test is always that they had to intend to make something reasonably good, and then just fail in every way. You can't. The core of a cult film is that they wanted it to be good, and they thought they were making something good. They probably thought that the ending was a really important political statement. I don't know what it meant, but
of course. Then again, considering where the presidency has gone since then.
Yeah, there's a truism that you always miss the other. No matter how bad the president is, you miss him a couple down the road. Like there's been more than once over the last 8 years where people are like, or 9 years, that are like, George Bush, that guy. Do you remember how like he hardly ever said really, really stupid things? Like he just misspoke. Like it was kind of a folksy way to be dumb as opposed to an actual dumb. He's like me. He did not have to pronounce things because he only saw them written down. Oh man, this was quite.
Oh my God.
These are the only this one and the final episode are the only ones that we enjoyed together. The three of us got together and we watched these last two, and it was so difficult to not get into this stuff while we're watching. And then after watching them back to back, we were a little shell shocked and didn't end up recording it that day, which was our original intention.
This is true. So now it's been a week and a half, and it's like, do I remember anything? And as we start talking about it, you start remembering lots. So, but
I don't know. I enjoyed
like,
much more on the. I just watched them again today. Actually, there are so many little jokes I didn't get the first time around in the Washingtonians.
Nice. I mean, the real enjoyment was the Washingtonians we met along the way.
Yeah, as usual. As usual. And no nudity. We're just going to throw that in there, and we'll get
no
more
nudity,
into that
so,
in the final episode.
So
we're doing a count on the final 6 episodes, how much nudity we get. And
the predictions.
And this is another thing we have to continue when we're talking about what we're doing next. We were talking about doing Fear Itself, which is the spiritual successor to this, that was on NBC, and to see how it is they would do a horror film or horror anthology series on network TV in the 2000s, and that was curious to certain. And then Nick brought up, man, that means we're going to go a whole season without nudity, and so that
cooled us on that for sure.
Course. Yeah, no, I mean, it did change. That was a good point.
Yeah, several of the shows we were looking at were network shows. So, I mean, we might increase the WTF level, but the graphicness and the nudity will go just flatline. Our original predictions were, I said 3 out of the 6. Jack said 2 out of the 6. And what Nick said was somewhere between the 2, which, is 2.5. But so far we've had 2 episodes and a painting with boobs in it, which to me might be that 0.5.
It might be.
That made the deciding factor here.
Nick not being able to do math, apparently, working to his advantage.
In fairness,
Nick is also the one who's like, I don't think Nick can go 13 episodes of a podcast without talking nudity. I think.
See, that's just Nick knowing himself, though, and that's
I'm not saying this is a bad thing.
They pan on that painting a long time for like a throwaway shot.
And in fairness, you could not put that painting on network TV either.
No.
So it would be considered nudity as far as the network was concerned, and as far as the
But they weren't hot. They were kind of not hot and busy eating.
Didn't make that a factor.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we didn't say that there's going to be. I didn't say there's going to be 3 episodes with nudity that made me all fuzzy inside. There was no qualifier.
Okay.
And we have
let's wrap this sucker.
Some pretty disturbing nudity in this.
Oh, that
all as long as they're hot, there's no disturbing nudity to me. But
they don't even have to be that hot.
That's true. Maybe Ichi the Killer or whatever was that one. Maybe that wasn't that hot. I mean, it started off hot, but really it didn't end. Yeah, hot.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a little micro targeted.
What was it called again? Imprint?
Yeah,
Imprint.
Yeah, it was the one.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap this one up. This was the Washingtonians, and next time we'll be talking about Dream Cruise, which is the final episode of the series. We can be found on Instagram at the Cult Film Showdown. And we are sponsored by WeTalkPodcast.com, the home of the Octagon, where we detail our search for the ultimate B movie, which right now it seems to be just we're standing pat that we found it and we're done with that. And We Talk Podcast has a Facebook and they have a Twitter as well as the website. And the website also hosts several other great shows, so check those out. So for Nick and for Jack, we will talk to you next time for the finale.
Oh, I call it the ultimate.
The ultimate?
Yeah.